Have you ever just sat and wondered where stuff in space gets its names from? Because it seems to me like on one hand you've got things like Jupiter or the Milky Way and Andromeda and Vega and all these other cool names, but others sound like you accidentally sat on your keyboard. Like there's no way that's a celestial object, that's my goddamn router password. Well, turns out there's an entire history of science and colonization and mythology and stories behind these names, and it gets pretty weird. You can probably guess that a lot of astronomical names have Latin origin, with our solar system being the prime example. All the planets are named after Roman gods, well except Earth, but we'll get to that later. And usually the planet satellites are related to its god. For example, Mars, the war god, has two moons named Phobos and Deimos, who are his sons in the myth. All of Jupiter's moons are named after figures related to Zeus, who is a Greek counterpart. The main ones, Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto, are named after his lovers. The rest are named after his other lovers, children, victims, and people associated with him in general. Sometimes all of them at once. Saturn's moons start similarly, but then they ditch the entire Roman theme. They have names originating from Norse, Gallic, and Inuit mythology. And for some reason, astronomers abandoned the entire mythology thing with Uranus because its moons are named after characters from Shakespeare's plays and Alexander Pope's poetry. The Milky Way also gets its name from a Greek myth about the goddess Hera, who sprayed milk across the sky. There's some interesting backstory on that. Stars are a bit of a different story, simply because there's so many more of them. The brightest stars, such as Sirius, Rigel, Betelgeuse, and Aldebaran, mostly have Greek, Latin, and Arabic names. There's a lot of Arabic in there because when the Roman Empire fell, Islamic astronomers preserved and expanded upon Greek astronomy. The name Betelgeuse, for instance, is derived from the Arabic term Bat al-Jawza, which means the giant shoulder. Rigel is Arabic for foot because it's the foot of Orion. Aldebaran means the follower because it seems to always follow the Pleiades star cluster. But as more stars were discovered, people quickly realized they couldn't give cute little names to all of them. The count went from hundreds to tens of thousands, especially after the first telescopes were invented. So this dude, Johann Bayer, came up with Bayer designations in 1603. He decided to label stars based on their brightnesses, first represented by a Greek letter, followed by the constellation name. Alpha Centauri, for example, is the brightest star in the Centaurus constellation, and Gamma Velorum is the third brightest in the Vela constellation. This approach sounds fairly systematic, but it's not really perfect, since a lot of these stars' brightnesses were measured by the naked eye back in the 1600s. Like Tau Ceti, for example, where Tau corresponds to 19th on the list, and not the 19th brightest. A century later, this guy comes up with Flamsteed designations, which are kind of similar and use constellation names, but the numbers behind them were based off something called right ascension. In the same way that the Earth has a coordinate system in the form of longitude and latitude, the sky is described with right ascension and declination to mark positions. Right ascension is the equivalent of longitude and is measured in hours and minutes. Why is that? Because the sky basically just rotates above us as the Earth spins. So the right ascension is really just telling you when an object appears to cross a certain point in the sky. Declination is the equivalent of latitude, but we'll get to that later. So the Flamsteed system just lists the order of increasing right ascension within each constellation, or the order in which they rise from east to west as the Earth rotates. 61 Cygni, for instance, is the 61st star to arise in the Cygnus constellation. Now again, these are a bit outdated and inaccurate, but hey, this was the 1700s. Now we have this mess. Why? You see, with newer discoveries, especially those found in massive sky surveys done by satellites or telescopes, there simply are too many objects for each of them to be given a name. The number of objects is in the billions now, so we kind of need a new system. So the International Astronomical Union, which is responsible for naming celestial objects, uses catalog designations. One way to do these is by first tagging the survey or telescope that found it, followed by the serial number, and then a letter if it's an exoplanet. So the galaxy NGC 4889 is the 4889th entry in the new general catalog. The Messier catalog, otherwise known as Messier objects, gets a little M followed by the entry number, like the M87 galaxy whose black hole we imaged. Exoplanets are then named after the star they orbit, with the first planet getting the lowercase letter b, the second c, and so on. Clean, boring, efficient. Sometimes though, exoplanets do get actual names through IAU naming campaigns. They launch campaigns such as Name Exoworlds, where countries and schools and astronomy clubs are invited to propose name ideas. The best ones are presented and the public can then vote on them. 55 Cancri E, for instance, which is the fourth discovered star in the 55 Cancri system, has been officially named Janssen. Another common way to name objects is by straight up using its celestial coordinates. We talked about right ascension, but the other part, declination, is like latitude in the sky. This is measured in degrees above or below the celestial equator, which is the sky's version of Earth's equator. This is quite handy for astronomers since the object's exact location is right there in the name. The same applies to exotic objects such as black holes and neutron stars and pulsars. Gaia BH1 was the first black hole detected by the Gaia telescope. Oh, and fun fact, that telescope has logged over 1.7 billion entries and is the most successful ESA mission ever. Unfortunately though, it just recently got decommissioned and was yeeted into interplanetary space because it ran out of propellant. Anyway, some types of objects get special abbreviations, like pulsars, these absurdly fast spinning neutron stars get the prefix PSR followed by the coordinates or the serial number, and supernovae get the label SN followed by the year of discovery, like SN 1987A, which is one of the most studied supernova explosions ever. And so really, these seemingly messy, long, annoying names are perfectly logical and systematic and are very helpful for astronomers. Now going back, I noted that the Earth and even our moon don't have Latin names like the rest of the planets. This is because the word Earth comes from an Old English word eartha, which just means ground. You see, back then it wasn't a specific celestial entity or an object. It was just a place we lived in and farmed on. So although people knew of the planets, they didn't realize they were also living on one before the 1500s. Everyone just thought of Earth as an unmoving center of everything. And technically there are Latin names because the Earth is called Terra and the moon is Luna, but these are just general words for land and moon. Asteroids, on the other hand, are mostly just named after the people who discovered them. In fact, you could have one named after you. All you gotta do is just discover one, track its orbit well enough, and then name it. So that's why you have asteroids called 9007 James Bond or 2309 Mr. Spock, which by the way was Discoverer's cat's name. It's very cute. Another fun example is the asteroid Oumuamua, which visited us in 2017. It was the first time we saw an asteroid that came from outside the solar system, so it was named Traveler from Afar in Hawaiian because it was discovered in a Hawaiian observatory. Same goes for galactic supercluster Laniakea, which means immense heaven. So yeah, I hope you guys learned from or enjoyed my first long form video. I may have gotten a little repetitive, and so some feedback would be appreciated. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe. Okay, bye.